Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Makes America Tick. I'm your host, Congressman Troy Carter, and I proudly represent the best place in the country, Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. Join me as we dive into an engaging conversation to answer the question, what makes America tick? What you're about to hear is a special episode of the podcast. Back in September, I had the honor of hosting a panel during the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference titled, We Survived the Storm, but did we survive the system? Featuring Congressman Jim Clyburn, Lieutenant General Russell Honore, and the Norman Robinson. During this conversation, we commemorated the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, reflecting on the lessons learned, challenges we faced, and how we grow stronger as a community. As 2025 comes to a close, I want to end this year with a moment of reflection, honoring resilience, acknowledging the work still ahead, and celebrating what we can build when we all come together. Hello, everyone. I'm Congressman Troy Carter, and I proudly represent Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. It has been 20 years since Hurricane Katrina devastated our communities. 20 years since lives were lost, homes destroyed, and families displaced. But it was also a turning point, a moment that forever changed the culture, the priorities, and the resilience of Louisiana and our people.
Saturday morning, August 27, 2005. Emergency hurricane coverage kicks in. New Orleans is in her sights. She is on track to hit the area before daybreak Monday.
We're going to be here throughout the duration of the storm. Thank you for joining us.
In rapid time, we were underwater.
I was stuttering because what was happening inside me was an experience that was alien to me.
The unspeakable fear comes true. The storm surge breached the city's levees at multiple points, leaving 80% of New Orleans missing underwater.
The pain associated with people being trapped on rooftops, being at the convention center, and the immediate aftermath of all of a sudden the city being like a bathtub and just been filled with water.
And you saw those people standing around the Superdome and you said to yourself, what?
Oh my God, how did this happen? But let's get it fixed.
Weapons down, damn it!
In 2005, Honore led Task Force Katrina, which rushed in when the first federal response was too little.
I do believe FEMA was ill prepared to do its work.
We are going to hold people accountable. They thought, well, you seem very angry. I am angry. And I have every right to be angry. And the citizens of New Orleans had every right to be angry because they were failed.
The fact of the matter is, all of us have been out front on this, offering to do what we could to help. The problem was FEMA. That's the President's agency.
We owe the people of New Orleans a fair chance. What we want to do is continue the restoration of the rest of the city.
We were able to push back those who said, let's not rebuild New Orleans. We were able to reject the notion that we weren't worthy of being rebuilt.
Although there is still much to be done in many key parts of the region, there is an overwhelming sense of encouragement and optimism that resonates loud and clear among the people. Though some areas are no doubt immobilized by red tape and a lack of funds, overall there has been significant progress accomplished solely via the spirit and unity of the people who love their neighborhoods and are committed to bringing them back.
Even people who are still suffering through the mistakes of this entire experience have been expressing real positive attitudes and hope for the future.
Hurricane Katrina isn't just history, it's personal. We carry the memory with us. But as we remember what was lost, we also use it as fuel to build safer, stronger, and more equitable communities. Let me be clear, we cannot afford to let our guard down. As storms grow more intense and longer lasting, our commitment to preparedness and recovery must grow stronger.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wendell Pierce. I want to thank my hometown Congressman, Troy Carter, for hosting this important panel, and inviting me to open today's event. We just marked 20 years since Hurricane Katrina. And before anything else, it's a reminder of the people we lost. They weren't just numbers or statistics calculated after the storm. These were real people with lives and families who were vital parts of our city. Everything we do to continuously rebuild is in their honor. After 2 decades, we're able to look back on what we thought went right and what we know went wrong during this storm. There's no denying it. People lost their lives due to the lackluster federal response, a lack of access to resources, and a lack of opportunities to evacuate. We can never let that kind of carelessness happen again. I'm a New Orleans native. I grew up in Pontchartrain Park, a neighborhood formed during the Jim Crow era. It took on major flooding during Katrina, and afterwards residents, along with myself, initiated our own reconstruction. When I saw my community destroyed, I put out a clarion call. I knew that I had to use my platform to help us rebuild and to tell our story. I knew the importance of resilience, and I also know the importance of equity and making sure that every community, especially those too often overlooked, has the ability to recover. I'm grateful to work with leaders like Congressman Carter to ensure our city becomes stronger and more resilient. Recovery isn't something that happens once and then stops. We are constantly working to be better. That's why we must speak out and fight back against harmful policy proposals like cuts to FEMA and NOAA, NOAA, and the Weather Service that threatens all the progress that we've made. And let's be clear, resilience is not just about surviving. It's about building a future where every New Orleanian has the security, the resources, and the opportunity to thrive. Together we can honor the past, protect the present, and create a stronger future. Thank you, and I pray this is an insightful and thoughtful conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an indeed honor to host this panel today as we commemorate 20 years since Hurricane Katrina forever changed our communities and our nation. It's now been 2 decades since Katrina devastated lives, destroyed homes, and displaced families. It was a turning point, a moment that exposed the deep cracks in our emergency response system and revealed painful truths about race, poverty, and inequality in America. We lost family, friends, we lost our way of life. But New Orleans and the Gulf Coast showed resilience like no other. We survived the storm, but questions remain. Have we survived the system? We'll ponder that today. Katrina isn't just about history, it's personal. We carry its memory every day. And while we remember the pain and loss, we also draw strength from the courage of survivors who rebuilt neighborhoods many said could never be rebuilt, and lives that some thought shouldn't be rebuilt. Their determination inspires us to build safer, stronger, and more equitable communities. As climate change fuels more frequent and severe storms, floods and wildfires, our commitments to preparedness and recovery must grow just as strong. That means sound policies, smart investments, science, not politics, must guide us forward. As a founding member and co-chair of the Bipartisan Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Caucus, I've made it my mission in Congress to push for legislation that strengthens disaster readiness, ensures relief, reaches all survivors quickly and fairly, and helps communities recover fully and swiftly. Preparedness is not a partisan issue. It's a moral imperative. So today, as we reflect on Katrina's 20th anniversary, let's recommit ourselves to a future where every family has the support they need during, before, and after disaster strikes. I want to thank my fellow panelists, and as I call your name, I'd ask you to join me on stage. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists. I'm blessed to call them my friends, blessed to have been the benefit of their guidance, their leadership for many years. I began by saying they were legends. I don't say that lightly, and you shouldn't take it lightly. They are, in fact, living legends. Legends that are among us, that we don't have to look to somebody else to write, create, or fabricate. These are real. They're among us. They speak to us every day. They stand up. They've stood up. They continue to stand. I'm honored to bring to the stage Congressman Jim Clyburn. Lieutenant General Russell Honore.
Thank you, sir.
Norman Robinson, who is a celebrated former White House correspondent, a journalist that has worked his way through every network in the city of New Orleans.
Thank you.
And yet he still stands.
That's right.
Gentlemen, your voices and experience are invaluable as we explore these critical questions together. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to take a moment to give you just a touch of, I won't say introduction, I'll just say presentation, because their fingerprints are on the tapestry of American history. First, I'd like to recognize my dear friend and colleague, Congressman Jim Clyburn, from the great state of South Carolina. Congressman Clyburn's leadership in Congress is historic. He was the first African American to serve multiple terms as House Majority Whip and has held numerous key roles, including Assistant Democratic Leader and Chair of the Democratic Faith Working Group. A native son of South Carolina, Congressman Clyburn's commitment to public service is deeply rooted in his upbringing as the eldest son of a minister and civic-minded parents. Before coming to Congress, he broke barriers as the first African-American advisor to a South Carolina governor and served in several community development roles. Throughout his career, he has been a passionate advocate for preserving African-American history, investing in rural communities and expanding access to affordable housing, broadband, and disaster recovery. His landmark 10-20-30 funding formula and leadership on disaster relief have made a profound difference in communities across this nation. Congressman Clyburn's work embodies the spirit of resilience and justice that defines this conversation today, and we're grateful to have him here to share his insightful thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, give another round of applause to Congressman Jim Clyburn. Next, it's my honor to introduce to present Lieutenant General Russell Honore of the United States Army, retired. So you know what a lieutenant general is. That's 3 stars, y'all. That's 3 stars. They don't have too many of them, but we got this one. He's ours. Give him another round of applause. Proud to call him my friend. He's a true leader whose decisive command during Hurricane Katrina became a defining moment in disaster response history. Born and raised in Louisiana, General Honore's deep roots in this region and his commitment to hard work shaped a remarkable 37-year military career. From his early days as an infantry officer to his leadership roles in Operation Desert Shield and Storm, General Honore has always exemplified dedication and service. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, General Honore was appointed commander of Joint Task Force Katrina. His leadership helped restore order and hope amid chaos when many believed the system had failed, and in fact it did. His efforts brought national attention to the critical need for preparedness and effective responses. Since retiring, General Honore has remained a passionate advocate for disaster preparedness and resilience, serving as a senior scientist, educator, public speaker, and author. His work continues to inspire communities to build culture, and readiness in the face of growing natural threats, to protect our environment and the people who live in close proximity of chemical plants and those things that would threaten their very ability to drink clean water and breathe clean air. We're grateful to have General Honore with us today to share his insights on leadership, response, and recovery. Please give General Honore a round of applause. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to present to you another dear friend of mine, Norman Robinson, a distinguished and award-winning journalist whose voice has been a trusted presence in New Orleans for decades. Norman's career spans across the country, from Southern California to Washington, D.C., where he served as a part of CBS's News White House Press Corps. But it is in New Orleans where Norman has made his lasting mark, anchoring WDSU and holding public officials accountable with his incisive reporting, calling balls and strikes, and as we say in Louisiana, calling it like a T.I. is. Like many in our city, Norman's experience and Katrina's devastation, he saw it, dealt with it, lived it, and was quite angry, as many of us were, firsthand. Losing his home and facing the immense personal loss, he still showed up. He put us above even his own family. He left the devastation of what Katrina did to him to still report the news, to still be a trusted voice. Beyond journalism, Norman is deeply committed to civic and charitable work. We're grateful to have Norman with us today to share his unique perspective on the resilience and challenges of New Orleans before, during, and after Hurricane Katrina. Give Norman Robinson and our panelists a big round of applause. So you see why I refer to them as living legends, and you see why I want you to know and to understand and appreciate them like I do, because even today they're giving. They're not being paid to be on this panel. They're taking time out of their schedules to be here, to share their experiences, share their knowledge, and to make sure that we as a nation never forget and never allow the catastrophe of Katrina to be repeated. Give them a round of applause. I've got a series of questions that I will pose, and we'll go to each of you with different ones, but then we'll allow you guys to kind of free flow, because this is intended to be a fireside chat, an informal discussion with family around the fireplace. Create the setting. We're family. We're together. We're talking real talk. No fluff. No fancy antidotes. Just real talk with family about where we are, where we've been, and most importantly, where we're headed. Mr. Robinson, as an anchor for WDSU, you had the responsibility of narrating the journey New Orleans would take to survive the weather of Hurricane Katrina. Due to the storm, you reported from Jackson, Mississippi, because your station was shut down. Set the stage for our conversation today by sharing a story on the journey that represents the pain of the moment 20 years ago, but also the resilience of the city and her people today.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my story once again. And as I speak, you perhaps will notice a bit of subsurface anger, because even now, when I think about what we endured, and then watching the video presentation, I get a little emotional. Imagine, if you will, with me, you're watching the entire Gulf of Mexico become consumed by this monster hurricane. And as a journalist, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why the hell aren't we evacuating people? Now, this is the week prior to the storm hitting. Now, I ask that question because for 3 decades, I'd been doing reports about the disappearing marshlands and the buffers that were no longer there to stop storm surges. And I'm feeling very anxious. And my news managers are trying to figure out where to send us. And the first place they wanted to send us was to the broadcast tower, which is located 30 miles south of New Orleans in a place called Chalmette, St. Bernard Parish. Now, Chalmette, St. Bernard Parish, to give you some idea of how ludicrous that idea was, that ended up some 25 to 30 feet underwater. And that's how we lost our signal, which meant that we had to find some other place to broadcast. I'd been on the air for about, I guess, 4 or 5 days straight, 16-hour days. And I finally got an interview with Max Mayfield, who was the chief of the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. And I think that was the Friday before the storm hit that Monday morning. And I asked Mr. Mayfield if this was the storm that we'd been dreading for some 30 years. And he said yes. And I knew I was going to interview the mayor later that night. So the mayor came on for his interview around, I guess, 7, 8 o'clock. And I put the question to him. I said, Mr. Mayor, you have 100,000 people in this city who are immobilized without access to transportation or shelter. What are you going to do about evacuating them? And his words to me were, which really pissed me off, I have to give that some legal consideration. Now, he was worried about the business community reaction because there was a hurricane scare prior to Katrina that happened to miss us, which meant he had called an evacuation and all of the workers left town and all the business people got pissed because there were no workers there to help them operate their businesses. So the mayor didn't want to piss the business community off. So he said he was going to have to give it some legal consideration about calling an evacuation this time. And I thought, what the hell? I don't care about your business people. I'm thinking about the number of people who will be here stuck with the possibility of losing their lives and their property and nowhere to go. And so he didn't call an evacuation. So that Saturday morning, I got the word from our news managers that we're going to evacuate you to Jackson, Mississippi, to our sister station at WAPT, because we know we're going to lose our broadcast tower. We know it's going to be underwater. We know this thing is serious. So they woke me up. I got off the air that Friday, well, it was actually that Saturday morning, about 2 a.m. I got the call at 4 a.m. that you're going to evacuate. You're going to have to evacuate. We're going to send a crew to Jackson, Mississippi, and we're going to send a crew to Orlando, Florida, to broadcast to our viewers who are still able to receive information because we know our tower is going down. So I'm on the road to Jackson, Mississippi, blurry-eyed, trying to get my family situated, trying to get my family out of harm's way. We did the best we could to pack up what we had. And I'm on the road to Jackson, Mississippi, which is about a 3-hour normal drive. It took us 9.5 hours to get there through contraflow, which I call can't damn flow. There's no such thing as contraflow. It's can't flow because it was ill organized and poorly prepared, like everything else. So we get to Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm looking for my family. We're all scattered because we did this in a rush. I'm looking for my family, and my wife tells me, well, your granddaughter went with her maternal grandmother because I was divorced, and so she went with my ex-wife. And I said, well, where did they go? She said, to Picayune, Mississippi. Well, hell, that's where the eye went. The eye went over Picayune, Mississippi. And I hadn't heard from anybody for a week. So I was on the air stuttering because that's how nervous I was about wondering if my granddaughter had made it. So I put out calls to the Red Cross, and finally, after about a week and a half, I discovered that my my ex-wife and my granddaughter were still alive. So I get a car from Jackson, Mississippi, and drive to Picayune to pick them up and take them back to Jackson, Mississippi, and then fly them off to Houston, Texas, where most of my family lived. My sisters and brothers are in Houston, Texas. So they took care of my granddaughter, and I was very pleased at that time that we had managed to find my granddaughter, because that really did play a number on me, because I was really upset. You don't really understand what's going on until you're in a situation like that. You don't know how you would react. By the way, folks, this is not a story about New Orleans. This is a story about you, because the biggest challenge we face right now is the challenge of trying to harness Mother Nature and the government's reaction to providing some kind of security net for us, some kind of safety net for us. They weren't ready. They weren't ready during Hurricane Katrina. And I got to tell you, waiting for them to come to our rescue, it took them over a week. And it's because they weren't really prepared. Like they aren't prepared now. They're totally dysfunctional. So if you're depending on the federal government to come to your rescue, shame on you. Yeah. You've got to have a plan of action on your own, because they're not ready. We're not ready for this war that Mother Nature is going to wage. Mother Nature is going to win every time. 3/4 of our planet is covered with water, and we can't manage water worth a damn. And we sit around as if we are safe and secure. You know, in the light of day, you know, when everything is calm, when there's no pressure, there's no threat of any kind of disaster or crisis, we feel okay. But it's looming. The disaster is looming out there. Remember what happened in Kerrville, Texas? The disaster is out there, and we are not ready for it. So just imagine sitting there at your home in New Orleans, watching the Gulf of Mexico become engulfed by this monster storm that's moving in, and nobody's doing anything. Nothing is happening.
I can tell you pissed off.
Yeah, I'm still pissed off. Yeah,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
And justifiably so. General Honore, and that's a snapshot of controlled anger. There's a lot of uncontrolled anger because people were hurting. This notion that people were just looting and doing crazy stuff. People were in survival mode, and the government had failed them. So everyone was fending for themselves. So Norman's cleaned this up a whole lot over 20 years. This would have been a whole different story had he told it 19 years ago, or just a little bit. So anyway.
He was only on Act 2.
He was only Act 2. We're going to come back to get Act 2. General Honore, at this very moment, plans and proposals are being developed that could deploy the National Guard in New Orleans to address crime, when crime is in fact at an all-time decades low. When you were asked to task the lead of the Joint Task Force, Katrina, I can still remember seeing you step off that Black Hawk. Put those damn rifles down. Are you stuck on stupid? But it gave calm to a time when we were living in chaos. You were confronted with people looting, or it appeared to be, atmosphere of lawlessness, or it appeared to be. There were some people who suggested heavy-handed measures and tactics. Talk to us about your approach in dealing with the population after the storm and the failure of the levees and what you saw when you first stepped off that Black Hawk to take an assignment that I don't think another human in this world could have done as well as you did.
Well, I take that as a compliment.
It was
That's what happens when you let students run shit. We don't overthink it. It's good to be here with you. You had about 3 significant doctoral papers wrapped up in that one question. And let me see if I can break a part of it down.
Yes, sir.
The part about telling the troop to put the weapons down was mirrored by 12 hours earlier. The governor had done a news conference because she was getting pressure from the White House and from conservative media to do something about the looting. And she went on television with some of her aides, that was Thursday evening, Katrina week, and said, as if she was talking to the people in front of the convention center, as if they could hear her. Our audience was Washington and conservative media. And she said, these troops will shoot to kill. I've told them to shoot to kill. This is over people getting food and water, by and large. And my staff told me, she said that Thursday afternoon, and I called her. I said, Governor, we just don't do that. And the federal troops weren't there yet. We were talking about National Guard and first responders, that she had given the order to shoot to kill, and the mayor, in his own mind, said, well, we're creating martial law. We're going to stop looking for people, and we're going to start prevent people from going in big box stores and getting food and water. So the whole idea behind the looting was out of control. And the next morning when the troops came in pointing their weapons at the people is when I told them to put the damn guns down. This was a humanitarian operation, we were lacking in evacuation when this was not a terrorist operation. We were growing up poor in Louisiana and drinking from the colored water fountain and buying a hamburger at the side window. We all experienced that. We had growing up and going to HBCUs, 12 years segregated school, we understood that there's a perception about our people when we are poor that we need to be feared. And not just the other majority race fears, some of us fear our own people if you see poor people. And you got a bunch of people standing around outside a building. People came in with their own cultural biases. We all have them. And they were displayed by the media. You got 3 arms of power here. You got representation of media. I'll take on the mantra of first responder. And you got seasoned politician. 3 of the things in the mix that try to find a solution. And your question was so complex, I hope I answered the one about National Guard we talk about now. The difference, the National Guard
And if
mission,
I can just interrupt you, that I want to be clear, because there's an effort to bring the National Guard currently to Louisiana. But don't conflate the two. This was a governor saying they were sending the National, this was 20 years ago. The governor's going to send the National Guard to add insult to injury. People who were trying to get water and food for themselves, for their children. Those were the ones they were turning the guns on.
Right.
And but for this leader saying, put those damn guns down, it could have been even a worse situation. I'm sorry, John.
The National Guard are your home troops. They're your family members. They live in your zip code, the people you went to school with. The mission they prefer most than anything is saving lives. But they've been used for security. Right now, you got National Guard up in New York patrolling the subways. During the National Convention, you had National Guard secure the National Convention last year, all under the control of the governor. This year in Louisiana, when we had the terrorist attack, that many people lost their lives, and we were followed by a big college football game, then followed by the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras, we put National Guard on the street, paid for by the federal government in what we call Title 32. The National Guard did an admirable job. They calmed people down. There's a sense of presence. Now you got other use of the National Guard. What we see in D.C., total different situation. Total different situation. And you got a situation out in California. A most inappropriate use of the National Guard because In that case, all of you know the story, mobilized them without the governor's authority, made them Title 10, which means they are restricted by the Posse Comitatus Act. What I fear most about putting National Guard now into New Orleans, because they've been there before, they know the city, and the only given weekend the Louisiana National Guard is in New Orleans, a bunch of them partying. And they know the culture. They've done that mission well in terms of security. I don't fear the National Guard. I fear what's going to come with them, because they're going to pick up the essential workers, because that's what this mission is really about. It don't have a damn thing to do with crime. It's a front to say we're coming in to fight crime, and then all those federal agents that come with the National Guard will set up checkpoints, and now they've got the authority because the Supreme Court has been castrated to say we can pick you up based on your accent or your skin tone. You look Haitian. Well, who the hell in here don't look like Haitian, bro? And you have a tendency to pick up more black and brown people than you pick up people from Ireland or England or Russia. So that being said, that is what fear me about the relationship that's going on in New Orleans now about bringing the Guard in. The Guard don't bother me. It's what come with them. Because they'll take the essential workers out that doing the roofs, that's cleaning the rooms, that's doing a bunch of the landscape, essential workers that came here under President Bush invitation, because we didn't have the population to do the rebuild. And he opened up immigration, said, come to New Orleans, come help us rebuild, and you can go find many of them right now in Kenner, Louisiana. That's what he settled. And the people of New Orleans felt so much about them that they built a statue to the immigrant workers. That's how much the people of New Orleans respected them. And I'll end there.
Thank you, sir. Congressman Clyburn, you were so moved by the natural disaster. You visited New Orleans. You were on the ground, so much so that even your own brain trust with AOC, you dedicated to Hurricane Katrina. You were one of the few leaders that pushed back when some said, we shouldn't rebuild New Orleans. It's a waste of money. This incredible national and international treasure of New Orleans shouldn't be rebuilt. It was leaders like Jim Clyburn who sat at the table, who you saw moments ago talk about it. Congressman, talk to us about your multiple trips to New Orleans, the Gulf Coast, and your work to help rebuild Katrina and the voice you loaned us at the nation's capital at a time when we needed you most.
Well, thank you very much, Troy. Let me begin by thanking you for your incredible leadership. Thank you so much for your friendship. Troy is not only being a great leader in Louisiana. I had him up in Michigan with me 2 weeks ago for 2 days. He is really expanding the wherewithal you people from Louisiana have entrusted in him to help other people across the country build better lives. When I went down to New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina, I met these two gentlemen. Because when I got there, you were already in Jackson, Mississippi. I don't think that you were around. I was watching you every evening on the news. Because before I got there, I was watching this guy. And he became a folk hero all over the country, as many of you know. And I kind of fell in love with him just watching his command of the situation. Because he was the only one that really grasped the command. And I started hanging out with another Norman Francis, who at the time was president of Xavier. Well, when I got there, I wondered a little bit about why I was selected to do this. And then I remembered my early teachings that we are no more or no less than what our experiences allow us to be. And I found out later that I had been through Hugo. lived in Charleston at the time of Hugo. And I had been a part of the response to Hugo. And so when I got to New Orleans, I was armed with that experience. And I knew what I felt about Charleston, what I still feel about Charleston. And when I heard all this discussion about not allowing, not just New Orleans to rebuild, I knew deep down inside what so much of that was about. And I was never, ever going to be a part of eliminating that great culture when we have the wherewithal to secure that place just like we are secure in Charleston. I mean, it's the same philosophy. And we can do these things if we listen to people like General Honore, who understand that what we've got to do is commit ourselves to be believers in the science and respond to the science. It's clear what we needed to do. You just heard from Norman. There was a warning long ago about what was happening. We've got warnings today about what to expect. And they're not just hurricanes. Just do a little research and you will see that Charleston itself is being warned about a pretty big earthquake to come. We don't know when it's going to come, but we need to prepare now for that. You hope, you know, that's the old saying we have growing up down in Gullah Geechee country. I don't know what y'all do down there. You know, it's better to have and not need than to need and not have. And that's what happened with Hugo. That's what happened with Katrina and Rita. I don't like to leave Rita out because it was a double whammy down there. When I got down to New Orleans, they sent me down to Bay St. Louis. I'd never heard of Bay St. Louis. I went down there. Rita came, a few hours after Katrina. And so we pushed back against any attempts to eradicate a culture, because that's part of what was going on here. Push back against any attempt to invest in the lives of people who were not privileged, who needed the government's help. Now, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, had never, ever experienced anything close to what they experienced with Helena. I think that's the name of that storm. And I saw you back into practice again up in North Carolina. People ran down the noise and looked you out to kind of figure out how to act. So whose neighborhood or whose state is next? So when they tell you that the response to disasters should be a local response, you need to get away from them. Because that's somebody who's feeding you up to the elements. There must be a national coordinated response to events like this. It must be centralized, and you got to have people who are capable and committed. I want to emphasize that. Capable and committed. We had a lot of capable people in Louisiana, in Mississippi, but they were never committed to doing that which was necessary to save those communities. And that's why they allowed that storm to build and build and build and visit that community without the proper preparation. So if we get committed to the safety and security of these communities. And we hold those who are responsible accountable for doing that which is necessary to maintain security for you, your family, and your community. We'll get much better outcomes with this. FEMA today has been proposed to be eliminated. I'm not making this up. Those of you who ain't keeping up with it, and saying that the disasters such as this should be left up to the local communities. Now, when that happens, let me just take South Carolina. Columbia is going to be taken care of. Charleston going to be okay, as safe as it is. Down there, it's closer to the water than any place else. Greenville and Spartanburg going to be fine, where the manufacturing center is. You know where I'm going. Go down to Utahville. Go down to Mechanicsville. Go down to Virginia's hometown, McBee. Them little rural communities, they will be left up. They will be fed up. They will never survive. And everybody's going to be okay, because Greenville and Spartanburg's still going, and they'll take care of all the manufacturing. And so the business people will still make their money. Columbia, the government's going to be okay. All the legislators will be huddled in the State House. In Charleston, they'll be able to live in their boathouses. But what will happen to those of lesser means? You will have fed them up to the elements. There's nothing any closer than that, than putting the aged out on the ice to wait on the next visit from the polar bears.
Perfect segue to the next question for you, General Honore, is we've heard the president talk about eliminating FEMA. He said, and I quote, "We're going to eliminate FEMA, punt the responsibility to the states, but give them less money." That's about as ridiculous of a statement I could ever hear from a man that we've grown accustomed to making ridiculous statements. General Honore, what does a system look like without FEMA? What does a system look like without NOAA? What does a system look like without satellite systems to predict and to inform, to foretell a storm coming? And would your role look like as a three-star general being given the assignment if these agencies didn't exist? Because what the picture is being painted by this president is a what if Katrina were today without, as failed as FEMA may have been, if we didn't have anything.
We'll go back to the response of 1927 flood, where you could go from Jackson, Mississippi to Lafayette, Louisiana in a boat when the levees broke or were blown. And 700,000 now people lived in segregated camps, because that's the way they set up the survival. And then the Army was sent in, literally, to take care of the people, along with the Red Cross. That didn't work for Hoover, and it took years until we got a FEMA, because the national response was send the Army in, a control force that told the black people in Mississippi, y'all get out here, we're going to rebuild the levee. And they didn't have a choice. They were told to leave the able-bodied people to go rebuild the levee, and that's how they rebuilt the levee in Mississippi in 1927. Under this scenario, what the president don't understand, a lot of stuff you don't understand, how elevators work and temperatures of water and teleprompters. There's a lot of things he don't get right. One of the things he don't get right, he don't understand, is when you have a disaster, it overwhelms the local response because the response are survivors too. In New Orleans, the police, the mayor's house was under 18 foot of water. The media is, those that could, left the city. All the police, many of them didn't know where their families were. But I go back to a point that the Congressman was lynching on to. On any given day, Mother Nature can build anything, break anything built by man. So wherever you are, you're subject to a disaster. We could be sitting here right now, and it doesn't take a hurricane, storm, or a fire to do it. You could have some kid in his grandma's basement right now playing on a computer and turn the lights out. If you turn the lights out in this city, in 12 hours it's a damn disaster. Because half of you won't get home. Just turning the lights out. So let alone on man-made things of this nature, Mother Nature can break anything built by man. You build a 12-foot levee and a 30-foot wall of water comes. September is National Preparedness Month. How many of you actually prepared? You got ready for homecoming game at your college. You didn't do shit. You spent more time getting ready for homecoming in a couple of weeks and going to watch the band and going back on the yard than you did for hurricane season. Don't BS me. I live in Louisiana, and that's what we do too. And Jackson State is coming to Southern tomorrow to get whooped. And that's just the way it is. I knew there was a lot of people from Mississippi in here. But back to the point, the president is wrong on this. The states can't handle a disaster. If the governor could handle a disaster, it wasn't a disaster, it was an inconvenience. They can't handle it. History has shown that. On the other hand, last year in Helene, I was so pissed, I almost had a heart attack. Because I knew the Secretary of Defense, who used to work for me. I knew the president, and I'm calling the White House. I said, you know, within 100 miles of where in North Carolina where the storm hit, in Helene, in the mountains, you got over 300 Army helicopters and nearly 70,000 Army troops that were going on Facebook and say, send us in, boss. The Secretary of Defense and the White House said, well, you know, they're using the National Guard, which is okay. They had 12 helicopters. Fort Campbell has over 100 helicopters. Fort Bragg, over 100 helicopters. Marine Expeditionary Force. The federal government and the White House, who's supposed to know how to do this shit, and pontificated about it in an election cycle, took 12 days to send the federal troops in. We had 30 volunteer helicopters, and the part I want to say is that didn't get enough credit in the documentaries or anything else, is volunteers saved our ass. They took people off their roofs, they got them to high ground.
Yes.
They went into stores, they got food and water. Volunteers, people helping people, just like our ancestors took care of one another when times were bad on the farm and on the plantation. Culturally, people took care of each other. And by the time we got there, people were on high ground. Yeah, did we go in homes and find people dead? Yes. The only point I'll leave with you is go back home, create an evacuation plan for your street. Most of the people we found dead were elderly, disabled, and poor. And they were home alone. The government isn't good enough to do this. I don't care what you talk about. It takes people helping people. The government ain't good enough to deal with this shit. You got to organize your tribe and your street to make sure Miss Thibodeau don't get left behind. Or your aunt or your cousin who lived 3 blocks over. We have to evacuate everybody. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, sir. Congressman Clyburn, 20 years ago, you responded to then President George Bush's address to the nation with this statement, and I quote, "The president delivered a well-written speech with comforting words and sincere offers of assistance, but his speech lacked the integral component that has been missing throughout this tragic ordeal, an oversight mechanism that is ultimately responsible for ensuring effective implementation of federal policy. Without an independent agency with a qualified administrator overseeing the recovery effort, our nation runs the risk of failing the Gulf Coast region a second time. That was 20 years ago. And we are right back at that same spot. Your words rung true then, and they resonate today. Our current president has suggested that we get rid of FEMA too. Based on your experience leading the recovery efforts of the Gulf Coast, how do your own experience in South Carolina, how would you respond to that suggestion? And we got about 10 minutes left.
Well, let me take
So I want to make sure we touch a few more points, and we keep it here 10 years because you guys have so much to give.
Well, no, no, you told me that was 20 years ago. I don't think I could say it any better.
Bingo.
To say, I'm just surprised that I had enough intelligence to say that 20 years ago. Before you start taking credit for my thought process. Well, let me just say a couple of things about that. The general mentioned a term you all may have missed, posse comitatus. Posse comitatus is being talked about today more than you realize, because that's a term you probably just let float over you. Posse comitatus came into being in 1878, 2 years after the deal was cut to bring an end to Reconstruction. Posse comitatus, you're hearing so much about today, came into being at the time this country was reverting to pre-Reconstruction, pre-Civil War. And the reason you hear that term today is because so much of what you hear coming out of the White House, so much of what you hear coming out of our Congress that Troy and I have very little control over. In fact, no control. Very little input because they don't want the input, is to revert back to those pre-FEMA days that will take us back. You just heard it from the general. He says if FEMA goes away, we are back to the 1927 flood. That Herbert Hoover, you've heard your great-grandparents talk about Hoover days? You thought it just had to do with whether or not you got through. The Hoover days were the days when our parents, our grandparents were ill-equipped and did not get the support of the government to do anything, to find work, not even to get Social Security. When Social Security came in the 1930s, it did not apply to 65% of black people in this country. A lot of people thought everybody got Social Security. Nope. Only 35%. If you worked in domestic work or farm work, you were not covered by Social Security. That is what happens. No Social Security, no protection from disasters, and it meant that me, the 9th African-American to serve in Congress from South Carolina, 95 years between number 8 and number 9.
Whoa.
Wow. 95 years. Why? Because of things that went into effect, like posse comitatus.
Mr. Robinson, the Superdome became a symbol of how Hurricane Katrina and the failures of her levee broke New Orleans. 20 years later, the city still stands. From your perspective, has our city and our nation survived the system? And I want you to just take a 1 minute lick at that, because I want each. Yeah, I know it's gonna be tough.
A 1 minute lick at it, huh?
It's not quite a yes. It's not quite a yes or no.
No, it's
but
not.
It's a yes or no with a little bit of lagniappe, as we say in Louisiana, a little extra.
Well, let me say first that the Louisiana Superdome should never have been a refuge of last resort. It's not designed for that. And it's not designed for that today. Did we survive the system? Yes, we survived the system in spite of the system.
No, we survived the storm. Have we survived the system?
Did we survive the system? No, because there is no system. There is no system. You just heard these two gentlemen talk about the dysfunctionality that we're faced with. And I'd like to just say that Congressman Kleisman is correct when he says, until we have a nationally coordinated disaster plan, there will be no system. And to back up what General Honore said, if you don't have an evacuation plan of your own, and if you don't have a system that you can rely on for your self-sufficiency, you're up the creek without a paddle. So no, we don't have a system, Congressman.
Okay, General Honore, we survived the storm. Have we survived the system?
No, because the enduring issue with disasters is you lose control. Somebody think if you got good government and you got a good FEMA and you got a good National Guard, you're going to be all right? You'll never match Mother Nature. So the preparedness piece about evacuation has to be fully understood and people leave. Because you'll never match a disaster. Government ain't good enough. The only people good enough is we got to take care of our families and we got to get out of there if we can. But don't ever expect government to be on time. If government is on time, it ain't a damn disaster. You got me? A disaster is going to create pain. It's going to break shit. It's going to cause irreplaceable stuff to be lost. Look at the people in California. They lived out there for years. They put all them damn trees next to their house in the desert. They thought they were doing a good thing. Whole community burned down. It will never be the same. And there's nothing they could do about it. I don't care how good your government is. With a good mayor, big fire department, and disaster, you lose control. So the best thing you do is be prepared to save your life. Because government ain't good enough to do it, to prevent it from ever happening, because Mother Nature can break anything built by man, burn it, flood it, or tear it up from an earthquake or tsunami. So be prepared. That's my only recommendation to you. We want government to respond, but if it's on time, it wasn't a disaster, it was a damn inconvenience.
Well, Congressman? Yeah. Have we survived the storm? Have we survived the system?
No, and I think Norman is right. We have not put a system in place. And I'm not too sure exactly how you do that. Why? Because for New Orleans, for Charleston, I represent the entire peninsula of Charleston, it's a hurricane that you have to prepare for. But we're told from the science that we better look out for the earthquake that's on the way. And then we wake up in the morning and there are fires all over California. And then you go to bed at night and it says, hey, there's a big windstorm happening out in Oklahoma. The disaster, we have no idea what the next disaster is going to be. So what do we have to do? We have to take the science, look at all those people who study this, and put in place a system which we have never put in place and we are crying out for today. No, the system didn't fail. It did not exist.
General Honore?
In closing, I want you to take a pen on this in your iPad. When it's hot, the poor is hotter. When it rains and it's flood, we get wetter. And when it's cold, the poor is poorer. They are colder. Remember, poverty has a compounding impact. Not only to survive, but to come back and bounce back and be resilient. We're resilient through our culture and our ability to have patience to wait. But every disaster has a compounding impact on the poor. I tell all these folks when I go to these emergency management conferences, your priority is tell me where the poor people live. I get a Sharpie out and I put a circle around. So that's where most of the people going to die. Get your ass down there. Get there before the disaster and get there after the disaster. Because everybody else is in their house in North Carolina or in Dallas, or they couch surfing with somebody in Oklahoma. The poor is going to die at a higher rate because their houses are not, they're more likely to be in a flood zone. And when the heat comes, they're not properly protected. After Hurricane Ida 3 years ago, we lost more people in nursing home to heat because we got global warming than we did to the storm. God bless y'all. God bless America.
Give it up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today for this important conversation. It's been powerful. And I'm reminded not only of the pain and loss we endured 20 years ago, but also the resilience, the courage, determination that we continue to have as a people. I want to extend my deepest gratitude once again to our exceptional panelists. Today's conversation was a reminder that while we survive the storm, the system itself continues to present challenges. We must never forget Hurricane Katrina, what it exposed us to, the deep and persistent inequities that demand our attention and action. The work on rebuilding is not just about infrastructure, but about justice, inclusion, and ensuring that every community has the support needed during and after the disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, give a huge round of applause to these incredible panelists. I told you when we started, they were living legends. I told you when we started it would be an exciting, impactful format. You have been just treated to three of the very best that our world has to offer. God bless you all, and thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, please share it with others. Post on our social media or leave a rating and review. You can listen to past and future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow my official platform at Rep. Troy Carter and subscribe to my newsletter at troycarter.house.gov. Thanks again. Happy holidays and laissez-les, bon temps, roulez. See you next year.